The bill was actually brought in last September, and it was gazetted in September and tabled in the Parliament in October. And then after a number of petitions by the civil society, there was a special determination by the Supreme Court telling the Parliament that this can be passed if you amend 31 clauses in the bill. And after amending those clauses, the bill was passed in last month, January, and it came into effect actually February 1st. And so it is an law in effect now. It's Online Safety Act now. And the main issue that I see is that how it has not put any effort into defining the consequences or the harm that has been caused by the actions or by this kind of content that we can see in online safety bills or online safety acts in other countries. I did a special comparison with the online safety bill or the regulation in UK, which is a contemporaneous law to Sri Lanka, and it is a very comprehensive. It has very comprehensive mechanisms to make these spaces safe, whereas in Sri Lanka you can see that it's not catering to that purpose, and that is the main issue. And with the Sri Lankan context, with the historical events, how the laws have been used to persecute, it's a common doubt what this law will actually be used for. And before the special determination of the Supreme Court, the bill that they had before the amendment, it had overbroad terms such as distressing, threatening statements, which, I mean, a statement can be distressed to anyone, and anyone can claim I'm distressed by this statement. But those kind of phrases have been removed by the act that is passed now, but still it has significant consequences. For an example, if we look at the false statement. So for an example, the act says that if someone communicates false statement in their platforms, even for an example for the purpose of causing a riot, even if does not cause a riot, the person can be imprisoned for 3 years. And if you look at the UK Act, you can see these false statements look at the fact that whether it has caused non-trivial psychological or physical harm to a likely audience. So just because someone communicate a false statement in their platforms, you cannot possibly imprison that person, because even the MPs of the country post false statements, and there are fact-checking mechanisms to actually see whether these are correct. So the false statement by itself, it cannot possibly be regulated. There are other mechanisms. You cannot imprison a person just because it's a false statement. And that's why you need to look at the harm that's caused by the particular statement.
And that's, I guess, the problem. It hasn't yet really been tested, but we do know that social media was a very important mechanism during to harness protests back in 2022 when the government was in crisis. Do you think this could impede similar activity down the line?
Well, social media has played a huge role in Sri Lankan political context. It plays a major role in 2015 election, and definitely played a major role with the 2022 protests. So yes, and there are a number of laws that can be used to persecute and that can use to impede the freedom of expression in Sri Lanka at the moment, even without this act. For an example, the Prevention of Terrorism Act, the number of public security ordinance, the ICCPR Act itself has used to persecute freedom of people for freedom of expression. So there are a number of laws, and this can really add to that. And that is the main concern that the people have. And especially even after the passing of it, even with all those amendments to the clauses that were flagged by the Supreme Court, it still poses that question, can it really be used to hinder freedom of expression? And we can actually see it with the course of time. And given this year is a worldwide election year, 4.2 billion people are voting, and definitely it's an election year for Sri Lanka as well. So we are seeing how it will impact. And at the moment, with the Sri Lankan context, the civil society actually expecting some severe repercussions from the act.
Yeah. To your point, it is an election year. Do you think the government has introduced it to try and suppress freedom of speech? And, I mean, could it be, again, that there are just mass protests if they try and do that?
Well, actually, it's not just this act, as I mentioned, it's all the other laws that are in place as well. So all these laws can play a part. And the fact that this Online Safety Act that has come into play right now, this can really discourage the journalists. It can really discourage the public from expressing because of the severe repercussions that it can have. It's not just imprisonment, it's the resources that you will spend if you get arrested. It's the money, the time that you will spend just by being arrested. And it's all these points that will play a role here that will discourage the public in general from expressing themselves. And it's not just about the election, it's about the long term and how it will affect the expression of the people of this country.
Yeah. How popular is the government? You know, there was such a period of turmoil. Have they managed to stabilise things?
Well, we can only see the popularity after the election, so I cannot really comment on that because it's a majority decision. So we can see it after the election.
Indeed. Good to have you on, and we'll watch with interest as it plays out. Thanks, Sajini.
Thank you for having me.